Last year, America witnessed the racially charged shooting of Philando Castile in front of his 4-year-old daughter. The nation was paralyzed by the media coverage regarding this senseless shooting of an unarmed Black man. One factor that was overlooked was the trauma that occurred while his 4-year-old daughter sat in the back seat and watched. In 1969, a 12-year-old boy innocently passed out flyers to advocate for African Americans to vote. Later that evening, he was arrested for his crimes. His mother stood for 12 hours outside of the jail, waiting for him to be dismissed. Later that evening, as he was dismissed, he was whisked away to Chicago. By the time he was 20 years old, he had been arrested and he had been brutally beaten by Chicago police officers. Due to his untreated trauma, he later served 25 years in the penitentiary system. That man was my dad. A 3-year-old boy witnessed his mom being brutally beaten as a child. He was later placed in foster care, and there he was sexually and physically abused. His trauma wasn't treated. He now suffers from schizophrenia. He sleeps on the Chicago Transit rail system. He's homeless. He suffers from post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that young man is my baby brother. You probably have heard that violence and trauma are public health issues. This is true, but the message is that exposure to violence can disrupt a child's development and functioning if left untreated. But there's hope for this vulnerable population. Before I go on, I need to leave with you a few facts. Traumatized populations show more significant differences in health outcomes than in non-traumatized populations. Research has shown that certain factors make children and adolescents more susceptible to developing violent behavior. These factors include family and community circumstances like poverty and racism, being homeless, domestic violence, and unstable housing. You may ask, why is a pharmacist bringing this to me? Isn't this a public health issue? My response to you is, this is a health equity issue. But if you need me to, let me put on my pharmacist hat for you. As a mother and a grandmother of Black and brown children, a public health practitioner, a pharmacist, and a clinical scholar, I want to remind you that medications like stimulants and antipsychotics are often prescribed to children who have been exposed to trauma. And these medications are prescribed more to children of color. So, we have to find another way to promote resilience other than using medications. And I propose that we use a holistic view. First, we can start by building empathy. To create empathy, you must be willing to take an emotional risk. By being more vulnerable, start talking about your experiences and allow you to be more comfortable and about the complexities of their feelings. Second, encourage young people to dream and imagine. Although me and my brothers lost our mother at a very young age, I always knew the power that I had in me. I always knew that I would one day reach back and save another young girl. Perhaps one of the greatest tools available to us is the ability to dream and see beyond the circumstances, to see beyond the situations. The ability to dream and imagine is an important factor to help foster hopefulness and optimism. And both of these contributes to overall well-being. Finally, we can begin by building critical reflection and take loving action. From this viewpoint, we must approach healing and well-being not from a clinically standpoint, but from a political standpoint. This means that we must consider the ways in which the policies and practices and political decisions harm young people. All of these factors are collectively known as healing-centered engagement. Now, it sounds a little like trauma-informed care, but let me explain the difference between trauma-informed care and healing-centered engagement. The difference between trauma-informed care and healing-centered engagement is that trauma-informed care runs the risk of only focusing on the pathology, focusing on the trauma. But healing-centered engagement fosters the possibility of well-being. Trauma-informed care isn't wrong. I'm just proposing, instead of asking, what happened to you? What's wrong with you? Let's start asking, what's right with you? Everyone deserves to live the healthiest life as possible. Healing-centered engagement is a step toward a more holistic and humanistic framework to support young people who've been harmed.